Good evening. Tonight, death by hanging. Appeal court in Abuja affirms sentence by FCT High Court on Mariam Sanda for stabbing her husband, Biliaminu Bello, to death in 2017. Federal High Court in Abuja orders remand of the former chairman of the defunct Pension Reform Task Team, Abdul Rashid Maina, at the Kuje Correctional Center as his trial for 2 billion naira fraud continues. Lagos Judicial Panel hears testimony of how one Francis Idom, a physically challenged person, was shot dead in the Lupeju area of Lagos, allegedly by the police in 2019. And UK government raises concern over receding prospects of a breakthrough as talks on post-Brexit trade resume in London. Plus business, sports and later international news from our London studio.
On business news tonight, Nigeria Export Processing Zones to launch a new free zone registration process from January the 1st, 2021.
On sports news tonight, Italian Serie A giant Napoli Football Club renamed San Paolo Stadium after late Argentine football legend Diego Maradona.
It's a day awash with court cases and other related matters, and we begin with the latest in the case involving Mariam Sanda, who was sentenced to death by hanging this year for killing her husband, Biliaminu Bello, in 2017. Now, that sentence has now been affirmed by the Court of Appeal, Abuja Division, which upheld the judgment of an FCT High Court of January 27, 2020. Presiding Judge, Justice Stephen Ada, held that the 20 grounds of appeal filed by Mariam Sanda challenging her conviction lacked merit, and that the court was duly bound to do justice according to law and not sentiment.
The hopes of Mariam Sanda regaining her freedom have been dashed a second time following the judgment of the Court of Appeal. An FCT High Court had on January 27, 2020, sentenced her to death by hanging for killing her husband, Biliaminu Bello, at the Abuja residence. She approached the appellate court challenging the decision of the lower court, arguing that the charges against her were all hearsay. Sadly, that has also ended in futility, as the court dismissed her appeal, maintaining that she did kill her husband. Under Section 221 of the Penal Code, according to the judge, the offense of culpable homicide was punishable by death. The court noted that there was enough evidence pointing that she murdered her husband during a fight that ensued after she saw a nude picture of a girl on his phone. The judge, however, faulted the lower court for failure to rule on her preliminary objection before delivering judgment. Her counsel, Joe Gadzama, promised to challenge the judgment at the Apex Court.
We'll go to the Supreme Court and do our best and see if the Supreme Court, which is the last court in this country, will reverse the judgment. We have hope, and we believe that we have good grounds to go on appeal because, for example, no autopsy report was tendered in court, and we believe that there was no proper evaluation, and bearing in mind also there was no direct evidence against Mariam Sanda by any of the 6 witnesses produced by the prosecution. The entirety of the evidence against her was circumstantial, and in our own humble opinion, the circumstantial evidence was not cogent, was not compelling, was not convincing. There were contradictions here and there, and that evaluation of the bits and pieces of evidence to prove the 3 major and fundamental ingredients in the offense of culpable homicide punishable with death were not proved. So this is our contention, and we stand by that, and we're strong in our convictions, and we believe that it can go the other way, and we believe that we can reverse this judgment on appeal.
The appellate court has spoken, so we'll now be waiting for their next line of action. Defended the matter right from the High Court to this position. It's our court. We will wait for whatever it is, their case, then we'll respond appropriately, as we've just done in the instance.
All eyes are now on the Supreme Court to determine her fate.
Also at the court, following his extradition from Niger Republic, former Pension Reform Task Team boss Abdul Rashid Maina is back in prison for where he will be attending his trial for alleged 2 billion naira fraud. The Federal High Court in Abuja today ordered the remand of Mr. Maina at the Kuje Correctional Center. At the resumed hearing in Abuja, the counsel representing Mr. Maina, Francis Orosanye, formally withdrew, and the new counsel engaged by him asked for a short adjournment to enable him study the facts of the case. Justice Abang granted the application for adjournment on the ground that the defendant, who is presumed innocent, is entitled to legal representation.
Following his arrest by Interpol, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has produced Rashid Maina in court for the continuation of his trial. The prosecutor, after announcing his appearance, applied that the defendant be remanded in custody. He premised his application on the grounds that Mr. Maina's bail had been revoked by the court. He reminded the court that Maina's reappearance is as a result of a bench warrant that was issued against him on November 18, 2020. However, Maina's new lawyer, Mr. Adaji Abel, opposed the application on the ground that he has just been briefed to represent the defendant. He applied for a short adjournment. In a bench ruling, Justice Okonabang approved the application of a new lawyer in the interest of justice. The court, however, held that the defendant should be remanded in custody since the bail earlier granted to him has been revoked. Barely 24 hours after the lawyer representing Maina's company withdrew from the case, the lawyer representing Maina also withdraws. He gives his reasons for doing so.
As for today, the 4th day of December 2020, we ceased to represent Mr. Abdulrashid Maina in his case before the Honorable Court per Justice Abang. The same thing happened in the case of his son, who is also standing trial before the same court. Our reason for withdrawing our appearance for both of them, as stated in our notice of withdrawal of appearance, we considered grounds of professional ethics as well as grounds of our ethics as a firm. And we thought it best that it was good for us to cease representing him, more especially as we could not tell his whereabouts and as his continued absence from court was also bringing some sort of embarrassment to us.
The case was adjourned to December 8th for continuation of trial.
Staying with the judiciary, hours to the Imo North Senatorial District by-election, an appeal court sitting in Owerri, the state capital, has disqualified Senator Ifeanyi Ararume as the candidate for the All Progressives Congress. The court also directed the Independent National Electoral Commission to immediately replace Mr. Ararume's name with Mr. Frank Ibizim as the authentic candidate of the APC in the election. Delivering the judgment, the five-man panel noted that the November 6 judgment of the Federal High Court in Owerri, which earlier declared Mr. Ararume as the authentic candidate, had no jurisdiction under law to entertain the matter. Meanwhile, the Federal High Court in Abuja has disqualified Mr. Ibizim as the candidate of the APC in the Imo North Senatorial by-election. Justice Inyangeko, in a judgment today, disqualified Mr. Ibizim from contesting the election on the grounds that he made false statements and declarations in the affidavit and documents he submitted to the APC and INEC. From the Lagos Judicial Panel on restitution for victims of SARS-related abuse comes a disturbing account of how a physically challenged man was killed in 2019. His was one of the 5 petitions lined up for hearing at the sitting as it resumed today. While the witnesses for the first 2 petitioners were cross-examined and their cases adjourned, the cases concerning 2 others, Felicia Okpara and Ibrahim Kabiru, were also adjourned till December the 5th. After the video and other exhibits they presented were examined and admitted by the panel. But a witness to the 3rd petitioner, Mr. Kayode Omotosho, narrated how one Francis Idum was shot dead in July 2019 in the Ilupeji area of Lagos, allegedly by the police.
On Sunday the 14th, I was with Francis Eniudu until 5 p.m. because this said Francis Eniudu is a member of my association, Christ Apostolic Church Men's Association, in which I am the chairman. So we had cause to have a meeting, and we dispersed at 5 p.m. on Sunday. I was in my office precisely at 8 o'clock when I received a call saying that Francis Eniudu had been killed at a street very close to the church. I came to Shillong Street, Ajishegiri Street. I met him dead on the floor. Okay. And while there, the large number of people were shouting, this man has been killed, it's by Aki Muhammad alias Koya. They were shouting, they were saying, nobody would dare remove the body of this man unless the man that killed him, Aki Muhammad alias Koya, come. While there, I took the picture, like most people that were there were taking pictures of the line of his death. And just there, while I got there, I picked up this shell, this bullet shell. Okay. This bullet shell, I picked it up and made a photo of it. Okay. You picked up the bullet shell? Yes, I picked up the bullet shell. Just beside him. You know, it was hit on the head. It was hit on the head. And the bullet shell was very close to that where he laid his head. So I picked up the bullet shell. As we were there, looking at the dead body on the floor, not quite long, large number of police vehicles came with siren. As they disembarked from the vehicles, they were firing tear gas. So everybody begins to camp for his life. By the time the whole thing settled, they had carried the dead body of Francis Eniudu. Who carried it? The police that came. You know, aftermath of that, they packed loads of people. They were going to various houses to pick people, indiscriminately, old men. Who was picking people? The police, those people that I said came. Another bizarre thing was that just before 1 hour to the incident, DSP Bala Elkana issued a press release less than 1 hour to the incident, saying that Eniudu was killed by hoodlums.
Meanwhile, the Nigeria Police Force has applied to withdraw a suit it filed yesterday against the judicial panel set up to probe allegations of brutality and human rights abuse against the force. Now, in a notice of discontinuance filed by Police Counsel Festus Abude, the security agency said it wished to withdraw the suit against all the defendants. The force had earlier argued that the establishment of panels of inquiry by the state governors to investigate his activities was illegal and unconstitutional. But the Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, frowned on that action and ordered immediate investigation into why the force legal team filed the suit. He maintained that the force remained committed to fulfilling all its obligations with regard to the disbandment of the defunct SARS, adding that the officer responsible for the suit may be sanctioned if found guilty of dereliction of duty. The Nigeria Governors Forum is backing all necessary reform that will result in a police force that works for all. The forum explains in a statement by its chairman, Governor Kari Fayemi of Ekiti State, that members have agreed to pay close attention to the conduct of police officers across the country in order to get them and other internal security operatives fully back to work, as they've not been functioning at full capacity since the NSAS protests. Other resolutions reached by the Governors Forum include a plan to meet with the President to address security challenges across the country, particularly following the murder of the 43 rice farmers in Borno State. Maintaining their stance that stamp duties belong primarily to states, the need for state attorney generals to review the Water Resources Bill, endorsed proposals for infrastructure development, keeping state COVID-19 task force teams and emergency operation centers active and operational. The governors also agreed to achieving the second eligibility criteria requirement for publishing online their approved annual state budget, inaugurate the NGF-NESG Economic Roundtable Steering Committee, and encourage the federal government and the Academic Staff Union of Universities to hasten implementation of the truce elements in their resolutions to enable students return to school. Suspects arrested in connection with the attack on the Universal Christian Church attended by the father Governor Nyesom Wike, the Rivers State Governor, in the early hours of November 29th have been paraded by the Rivers State Police Command. According to the Commissioner of Police in the state, Joseph Muken, the suspects who allegedly admitted to their involvement in the crime also confessed to be members of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra. Mr. Muken says they will be charged to court to face the full wrath of the law, while investigations are ongoing to bring their sponsors to book. In another development, this time in Kaduna State, 2 suspects have been arrested over the murder of the district head of Zangun Kataf local government area by troops of the Operation Safe Haven. The district head of Gidanzaki, Mr. Haruna Kuye, and his son Destiny Kuye were killed in their residence on November 14, 2020, while his wife and daughter were injured by the assailants. In a statement, the Kaduna State Commissioner for Internal Security and Home Affairs, Samuel Arowan, says the suspects, Goma Mesamari and Daniel Mesamari alias Uma, were tracked and arrested by the military at Company Amawa village in Zangun Kataf local government area. He explains that other persons suspected to be involved in the murder of the traditional ruler are still on the run. Also concerning security, the theater commander of Operation Lafia Dole, Major General Farouk Yahaya, is warning communities in Borno State allegedly collaborating with Boko Haram elements to desist from the act or face strong military action. He lists the level of collaboration and support given by the communities to terrorists to include providing information and intelligence on troops and law-abiding citizens, logistics supply, and trading with the terrorists. The communities indicted for allegedly harboring terrorists include the ones in Jakana, Mainuk, Magumeri, Gajiram, and Gubio, all in Borno State. The statement adds that the army may also be compelled to come out hard on any community or group that supports or works with terrorists in any way or act as buffer or harbor zone for them. The Mamari community, where 43 rice farmers were recently killed, was not mentioned in the list. The ICPC chairman of the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission has been highlighting some of the ills in the delivery of constituency and executive projects in the country. Professor Bolaji Owansonoye says the ICPC is working on fixing the problems of constituency projects delivery in the country, as several projects have been abandoned with over 850 million naira recovered in cash and assets. This is captured in a report by the ICPC in over 700 projects the Commission says it tracked.
Needs to be better coordination because, as you know, these are opportunities given to legislators to take development close to their people. Let me tell you, Bolaji Owasonya, I support constituency projects, but I also support a reform of how it is delivered. It is the fastest way of taking development to people. There are places where we've intervened in, they've never seen water until we came and got the water project done, or light. However, if the legislator loses the project that they have put there that maybe have been half done, the new guy does not finish. It doesn't even go there. That's like trying to finish and help the reputation and the image of the other guy who might be from the opposition party. So that project is dead. This needs, is documented in what you have. If you check what are our recommendations, we put there in black and white. There needs to be better coordination. There must be a policy to say, even if you come into the legislature and a project was started, you must finish it. The way things are done right now, and I should also tell you that civil servants also have immense powers and opportunities to put in projects into government, into the budget that government is not aware of. One of the things we found, which I also read out in my speech at the presidency, is that government says we will only fund ongoing projects. When civil servants want to be mischievous, they will describe a new project as ongoing and put it in the budget because they want it done in their area. So these are all the anomalies that we find around it.
The federal government is making a case for the adoption of a secured agricultural transport and storage corridor as the right step towards the attainment of food security. The Minister of Trade, Industry and Investment, Mr. Adeni Adebayo, explains that besides the availability of food, a secure commodity zone will create jobs and save the nation about $37 million owing to improved supply of food. Meanwhile, the Managing Director of the Nigeria Incentive-Based Risk-Sharing System for Agricultural Lending, NIRSL, Aliyu Abdul Hamid, is confident that the plan will pave the way for the attainment of the AFCFTA agreement.
Nigeria is endowed with arable land, which makes agriculture an important sector of the economy with high potential for employment generation, food security, and poverty reduction. The sector's growth rate over the last 5 years averaged 4%, with crop production dominating the sector, accounting for 22.6% of gross domestic product. But in spite of all these huge potentials, farmers experience post-harvest losses, making the attainment of food security a daunting challenge.
We are ready to put up to 75% guarantee on any finance, the face value of that finance, depending on the segment that you are playing along the corridor. If you are a transporter, there's a level for you. If you're a storage service provider, there's a level for you. If you're a producer, there's a level for you. All these guidelines have been shared with all the banks, and they are very clear on that one.
All that is about to change with the development of a secured agricultural transport and storage corridor, which is an initiative of NISAL. The policy is expected to facilitate movement of goods from primary sources to domestic consumer, industries and the international market.
There's a lot of wastages. Nigeria is losing a lot in terms of what is produced. So what this does is that it creates a situation whereby that wastage is drastically reduced and we're able to maximize the output of the farmers. The farmers will get better value for what they produce. We'll be able to export more in terms of, so we'll earn more foreign exchange from the exports that we make, and then be food security in the country itself.
The provision of hybrid seeds, infrastructure and incentive for farmers is also being canvassed to boost productivity in the agriculture sector.
The opening up of the African markets through the Continental Free Trade Agreement is another imperative that I think Nigeria, especially in agriculture, needs to pay attention to.
The implementation of the secure agricultural transport and storage corridor will involve interagency cooperation. The ultimate objective in the long run is to ensure food security, job creation, and foreign exchange earnings for the government.
When the news at 10 returns, Nigeria export processing zones to launch a new free trade zone registration process from January the 1st, 2021. That's on Business News. Please stay with us. Guarantee Trust Bank PLC has joined the growing league of financial institutions to adopt a holding company structure and become Guarantee Trust Holding Company PLC. To consummate the plan, GT Bank has received a 100% vote from its shareholders to bring this decision to reality.
To learn from whatever has happened.
A court-ordered meeting between Guarantee Trust Bank PLC and the holders of its fully paid ordinary shares of 50 kobo each to bring to reality its decision to transform into a non-operating holding company.
Ask for whatever is left on my dividend.
This gathering is initiated for both parties to agree to the proposed restructuring of GT Bank PLC, which will become Guarantee Trust Holding Company PLC, the listed parent entity of the bank and related group companies.
The board considered the scheme to be the most appropriate approach to create greater strategic flexibility and diversification of the group's revenues. The bank will continue to be subject to the full suite of CBN banking regulations and in all other material aspects. The banking subsidiaries will continue to be subject to oversight of the prospective prudential regulatory authorities in their jurisdictions.
But before this strategic decision can be actualized, 7 special resolutions must be passed, among which is the deliberation on the shareholders' holding come the restructure.
The scheme will result in transfer of GT Bank shareholders to Holdco in the same proportion as their current holdings in the bank, and the bank being held wholly by Holdco, which will be a regulated entity for CBN's purposes.
The whole idea of the holding company structure is to create more value for shareholders and increase shareholder value. So I'm happy you like the shareholding structure. The idea of holding company is not to introduce any new super shareholders. Your 1 share in the bank becomes your 1 share in the holding company. So complete transparency.
Voting on the resolution at the meeting is by poll, and based on the results, the motion is carried unanimously at 100%. The report of this meeting will be filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission and the CBN for its final approval, after which a copy of result will be submitted to the Federal High Court to enable it to sanction the scheme of arrangement.
Meanwhile, Innocent Nigeria Limited, makers of Innocent brand of automobiles, has approached the Federal High Court in Enugu seeking to stop Guarantee Trust Bank from deregistering as a public liability company until the payment of judgment sum secured against the bank. Also joined in the suit are the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, the Corporate Affairs Commission, CAC, and the Securities and Exchange Commission. In a statement, Innocent Nigeria listed the reliefs being sought to include an order restraining the Corporate Affairs Commission from deregistering GTB as a public limited liability company and/or registering the bank as a private limited liability company until it pays the outstanding judgment debt of 32.8 billion naira to Innocent Nigeria Limited. An order of perpetual injunction restraining CAC from registering or re-registering GTB as a holding or financial holding company, whether as a public or private limited liability company, until it pays Innocent Nigeria Limited the outstanding total judgment debt of 32.8 billion naira. An order setting aside the SEC's no objection to GTB's proposal to be re-registered as a private limited liability company and as a holding or a holding financial company. An order setting aside the CBN's approval in principle granted to the GTB to operate as a holding or a holding financial company, and an order of perpetual injunction restraining the CBN from granting GTB a financial holding company license and or a final approval to operate or carry on business as a financial holding company until it pays Innocent Nigeria Limited the total outstanding judgment debt of 32.8 billion naira. Innocent Nigeria says that since its secured judgment against GTB, the bank is yet to come up with a payment plan and now seeks to deregister itself as a public limited liability company. Now for business news, here's Teniola Shoboali.
Thanks a lot, Olumide. Welcome to Business News.
part of efforts to improve ease of doing business, the Nigeria Export Processing Zones says it will introduce a new system for free zone registration from January the 1st, 2021. In a statement released today, NEPSA said the new process has two stages. One would be put in place immediately, while the other would be adopted between 6 to 12 months. The new template, which would be digitally driven, would include a company registration portal where all free zones could download NEPSA forms and would allow uploads of evidence of registration fee payments made by remitter to the Treasury single account and scheduling of virtual screening meetings. NEPSA is the agency responsible for promoting and facilitating local and international investment into license-free export processing zones. Meanwhile, the federal government has announced charges for Lagos-Ibadan Rail Standard Gauge, which is expected to officially launch in January 2021. The Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi, made this known today during the inauguration of the Governing Council of the Chartered Institute of Transportation Administration of Nigeria. It mentioned that the charge would range from 3,000 naira for economy seat, 5,000 naira for business class, and 6,000 for the first-class seat of the 157 kilometers long railway route. The $1.7 billion standard rail line, which is part of the federal government's railway modernization drive, is expected to begin operations later this month. Taraba State Governor Darius Ishaku has presented an estimated budget of over 168 billion naira to the State House of Assembly for the 2021 fiscal year. The spending plan, which is tagged Budget of Restoration and Stabilization, is 47 billion naira lower than that of the 2020 approved budget, which is over 215 billion naira. Governor Ishaku said his administration's desire to complete all ongoing projects is not sacrosanct in view of the recession the country has found itself, as well as the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic.
My administration's desire to deliver on all ongoing projects is not sacrosanct. We will do what it takes to bring to fruition our covenant with our people. We are also mindful of the fact that we are still in pandemic period, the second wave perhaps. This means that the pandemic will still impact on the budget implementation in the course of the year to come.
Well, let's check in on the stock market now. It seems that the bull has not given up its reign at the stock market after all, as the NSE's main index made a quick rebound in line with traders' expectation at the close of today's trading session. Chimeze Obi-Iwagu tells us more.
Thanks, Tenny. And yes, it is still a bull market despite those few days of profit taken this week. The week-to-date close is 0.7% positive. For today, Airtel Africa changed the narratives. Market was bearish until the telecom giant gained 51 naira 50 kobo just 30 minutes to the close of trading, and that pushed the index into the green, up 0.48%. The sell-offs we saw in the last two trading sessions were majorly as a result of profit taking, and even today, you'll see that the vibrancy was not as much as last week. Bargain hunting was also low. Look at the activity chart. About 293 million shares were traded, valued at a little over 4 billion naira in 4,392 deals. Again, the banking stocks didn't have a positive outcome this week because of some declining confidence, as investors believe there would be some corrections in that counter before the eventual bullish run, which everybody is expecting by the end of the year. Today, that counter ended flat. The interesting thing is that analysts will tell you that the current low prices at the equities market present a good entry point for a potential investor. For them, next week promises better performance, and the outlook for the rest of the year is still positive. Take it from me, Tenny, Santa Claus is on his way to the market. Not even COVID-19 will stop him. So let's get ready to welcome Santa. Back to you, Tenny.
And that's business news tonight. It's back to you, Olumide.
Thank you, Teniola. Still ahead on the news at 10. Frontline candidates in Monday's presidential election in Ghana signed peace deal ahead of the poll. And more from our London studio on Around the World in 5. Please stay with us. Welcome back. The two main presidential candidates in Ghana have signed a peace pact in the capital Accra, committing to peace and not violence before, during and after the election. Monday, December 7th, is the D-Day where President Nana Akufo-Addo of the ruling party, New Patriotic Party, is going head-to-head with former President John Mahama of the National Democratic Congress Party. This is the third time both candidates are meeting since Mr. Mahama narrowly won their first encounter in 2012 before losing to Akufo-Addo in 2016. With time running out, Britain and the European Union have failed to secure a Brexit trade agreement today, saying significant divergencies remain. Let's join our London studios now, where Simon Pusey has more on this and other international news on Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. US President-elect Joe Biden has said he will ask Americans to wear masks for his first 100 days in office to curtail the spread of coronavirus. Mr. Biden said he believed there would be a significant reduction in COVID-19 cases if every American wore a face covering. He also added he would order masks to be worn in all government buildings. The US has recorded over 14 million cases and 276,000 deaths from COVID-19, the highest of any country in the world. Authorities in Bangladesh have begun relocating thousands of Rohingya refugees to a remote island, despite concerns about safety and consent. About 1,600 refugees have been transported towards Basan Char, a flood-prone island in the Bay of Bengal. Bangladesh says all those being moved have given consent, but many Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh said in October they did not want to be relocated. Rights groups have raised concerns that many travelling to the island were being moved against their will. The United Nations said it had been given limited information about the relocations. Many of the Rohingya fled Myanmar after a military crackdown which began 3 years ago, in which UN investigators say as many as 10,000 people may have died and more than 730,000 been displaced. The UK and the EU are continuing their negotiation talks on a post-Brexit trade deal, with time running out to achieve an agreement. A senior UK government source has said the prospects of a breakthrough were receding and accused Brussels of making new demands over business rules. But the EU team denied this, with Chief Negotiator Michel Barnier calling Friday an important day. Both sides have to agree and ratify any deal by the 31st of December, when the current rules on EU-UK trade end. Protests continue in Peru, where farm workers demanding better wages derailed harvests of some crops, snarled transport of produce and left at least one dead. Peruvian interim president called the death of a protester a tragedy and told reporters the government would immediately investigate the casualty. Farm workers alleged police had attacked protesters to clear roadways and tame the demonstrations. Negotiations between the government and protest leaders have failed to reach agreement, though lawmakers have committed to reviewing a decades-old agriculture promotion law that farm workers view as unjust. Hundreds of Armenians have blocked the streets of the capital and called for the resignation of the Prime Minister over a ceasefire deal that locked in Azeri territorial gains in Nagorno-Karabakh. Nikol Pashinyan says he won't step down over what his opponents say was his disastrous handling of a 6-week conflict between Azerbaijan and ethnic Armenian forces over the Nagorno-Karabakh enclave. Protesters chanted "Nikol is a traitor" and police officers detained several people. The ceasefire signed by leaders on November the 10th halted military action in Nagorno-Karabakh, an enclave internationally recognized as part of Azerbaijan but populated by ethnic Armenians. A senior European Union official has said that providing swift humanitarian relief in Ethiopia was challenging because aid workers still do not have unimpeded access.
Should we look into this?
Speaking at a refugee camp in Sudan, he also said the EU has had no contact with more than 100 of its citizens in Tigray since the conflict began. Relief agencies in Ethiopia prepared convoys to bring aid into Tigray region, where a month of war is feared to have killed thousands of people and forced refugees to flee. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed declared victory over the Tigray People's Liberation Front after federal forces captured the northern region's capital Mekelle at the weekend. And finally, for the first time in history, 197 musicians, one from every country on earth, have formed an orchestra in a bid to show how people can transcend physical and cultural borders.
Wow.
The Earth Orchestra's song, Together is Beautiful, recorded in different locations then mixed together, and a documentary telling the stories of some of the musicians has been released today. In May, 57 of the 197 members met at Abbey Road Studios in London to lay the groundwork for the song. The project was overseen by BAFTA-winning composer George Fenton, but many of the musicians improvised around his melodies and themes, combining musical styles and using instruments indigenous to their own countries. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Thank you, Simon. Sports news is up. Here's Ayotunde Balogun.
Many thanks to Olumide. Players and officials of Rivers United today underwent a mandatory COVID-19 test before engaging Futuro Kings of Equatorial Guinea on Sunday in their CAF Confederation Cup second leg fixture at the Adoke Amesiamaka Sports Complex in Port Harcourt, Rivers State. The test is part of FIFA's health and safety protocol for every team featuring in international competitions to undergo testing 48 hours before any match. The results are expected on Saturday. Tottenham Hotspur manager Jose Mourinho is wary of Arsenal's threat ahead of the North London derby on Sunday in the English Premier League. Arsenal are currently on their worst start to the Premier League since 1981-82 season, with 13 points from 10 matches and in 14th place, while Spurs are top of the log with 21 points. Despite the contrast, Mourinho insists Arsenal's performance against top teams have been excellent. Napoli Stadium has been renamed after Diego Maradona in memory of the late Argentine football legend who led the club to 2 Italian league titles. Naples city authorities and the club's president had proposed renaming the San Paolo Stadium within hours of Maradona's death on November the 25th. The authorities confirmed that the stadium will now be called Diego Armando Maradona Stadium after the decree setting was signed. Italian champions Juventus have confirmed Fabio Paratici has been informed regarding the right of defense in relation to the Italian citizenship test of Atletico Madrid striker Luis Suarez. The prosecutor's office at the court of Perugia has opened criminal proceedings into the citizenship test undertaken by Suarez, who intended to gain Italian citizenship and avoid the non-EU rule. Suarez underwent the test at the University of Perugia as Juve had already filled all their slots for non-EU players, and obtaining Italian citizenship will have enabled the club to navigate around that restriction. And that sports news is back to you, Olumide.
Thank you, Ayo. Lieutenant General Dumkat Bali, a retired former Minister of Defense and Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff, has died. He was 80 years old. In a statement released earlier today by the government of Plateau State, General Bali was said to have died after a protracted illness. In his tribute, Governor Samuel Along says the death of the retired military general is a great loss to the country, considering the fact that he was one of the highly decorated officers who served the nation meritoriously in various capacities and proved his worth. General Bali served as the Minister of Defense and member of the Supreme Military Council between 1984 and 1985, and in the Armed Forces Ruling Council from 1985 to 1990. And the main news again. The appeal court sitting in Abuja today affirmed the death sentence by hanging by an FCT High Court on Mariam Sanda for stabbing her husband, Biliamin Ubelo, to death in 2017. Counsel to Sanda, however, said they will go to the Supreme Court to argue their case. That's it on the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Olumide Macaulay. You have a good night and a great weekend.